everyone. I'm Linda Nickell, and welcome to the Happiness Hour. Tonight, my guest is Joseph Marc Hamner. But he said I could call him Joey. So, Joey has a real gift for capturing those split second moments in nature, the kind you'd miss if you blink. Whether it's the flash of eye contact with an animal, the glow of light at dawn or dusk, or the subtle emotion in a wild creature, his work brings you right into the moment. The more time he's spent observing wildlife, the more he's come to believe that animals have emotions and something to teach us. And that really comes through in his images. His photography invites us to slow down, look closer, and reconnect with the beauty and spirit of the natural world. At the heart of it, Joey's message is simple and meaningful. Hold on to our sense of wonder and do everything we can to protect it. To see more of his work, please visit his website, josephmarkphotography.com. And if you're on Instagram, you'll find him at Joseph Marc Photography. I'm going to post those in the show notes so that you can get right into that link. But in tonight's presentation, seeing like a wildlife photographer before you lift the camera. Joey will talk about how wildlife photographers read light, behavior, and environment to anticipate meaningful moments, and why the most impactful photographs are often decided long before the shutter is pressed. So, with that, welcome back to the Happiness Hour, Joey.
Glad to be back. For those that don't know me, I live in South Louisiana, born and raised here. Got started in photography probably around 2021, I think, so roughly 5-6 years now. That's with a real camera. I was doing it for a while with just a little point and shoot camera or my phone. I used to run ultra marathons, and I always had either my phone with me or that little point and shoot camera, just trying to capture the things I saw out there. Then in 2020, took a trip to Jackson Hole, came back and looked at the pictures from that little camera and decided it wasn't good enough, and went out, started researching cameras. And for wildlife at the time, the Nikon D500 had great reviews, so I started with that, and I've been shooting Nikon ever since. And so that's long story short on how I got started with this.
Yeah. So, and I'm sorry, I don't think you said it, and I don't think I said it, but you do workshops. So, will we find those on your website?
Yeah, if you go to my website,
Okay.
josephmarkphotography.com, it's Mark with a C.
That's
Just
right.
to,
Yeah, that's why I'm going to
yeah,
link it, because it's Mark with a C. All right. Well, first of all, thank you for coming back, because in fact, I know right after you did your first presentation, I didn't even give you like a day to think about it. It's like, hey, would you be willing to come back? And you said yes. And it was great that I fit you back into the schedule so soon. So I really appreciate that. So with that, if you want to get straight into your program, you're welcome to do that.
all right, let's see if I can get this right with sharing my
Yeah.
screen.
Just hit, yeah.
Let's see. I'm looking to see here. Pop something up that I've never seen before. This site will see the content of your screen. Okay, I guess that's what we want. Can y'all see that?
Not yet. Did you hit share? Because it doesn't say that you've shared your screen yet. Hit share before you
Yeah,
well,
I
you
did
can
hit
hit
share. Let me hit cancel. I'm trying to see what it wants me to do here. Here we go.
Yep. Here we go. Well, even better. I was like, oh, get me off the screen. I don't know why I'm getting a lot of feedback on my end, but I'm going to turn my audio off to let you get going. All right, it's all yours.
Okay, thanks. So today I'm going to talk about seeing like a wildlife photographer before you lift the camera. A lot of times I go out with people and we come across something that they want to photograph, whether it's an elk, a bear, down here in Louisiana, alligators or different types of birds. And the first thing they want to do is pull that camera up and start shooting. And it's something we all do when we first start photography. We don't think about the backgrounds. We don't observe the wildlife or have or look for it. We don't anticipate motion. So I want to talk about that a little bit. What we're going to talk about here is observation, intent, and anticipation. And before we get started, let's remember through this that great wildlife images are often decided before the camera is ever raised. It's we learn to think about things before we shoot. We have intent on what we're going to shoot, not just going out and pointing the camera and pressing the click button to start shooting. So we'll talk about observation first, and this is really an underrated skill. Before we lift the camera, we should look for light, background, behavior, and then think about possibility. And what I mean by that is trying to anticipate what the animal may do, or what type what it's going to do. And observation just doesn't mean looking at the wildlife. We want to also make sure that we have our camera settings right too. Missed a shot 2 years ago, I think, or almost 2 years ago. The first wolf I ever saw, and I got a shot, but I saw him, and I was driving home from Wyoming. Saw him, and he went up on a little ledge, pulled over, and couldn't find him. And I knew he was still there, so I waited, and I knew the one spot that I had a shot if he came out at. So I set everything for that shot on my camera, except I was using a 200 to 500 millimeter lens, and I forgot to zoom back out to 500. I was at 200, and the shots he was a little too far for that 200, so they didn't come out like I wanted. So don't just think about observing the animal or the landscape. Think about your camera and your settings also. So I'll talk about light first and reading the light. Light is going to shape the mood and impact. And when we're thinking about light, we want to think about the direction it's coming in, the quality. Your best quality light outdoors is going to usually be early in the morning or late in the evening. That doesn't mean you can't get good light midday. I know everyone says, oh, we can't shoot midday. But if you could find filtered light, that could be really good light too. And I have some examples of that in here. And then the atmosphere also can play a part when reading light. We may have good light, but I'm sure y'all know in the summertime when it's hot, if that subject's a little too far away, that atmosphere, the heat waves are just going to destroy your shot. So we want to avoid bad light. And this shot here was when I took it back in the fall. And we knew the bear was coming through the willows. And we didn't know where she was going to come out, though, because we couldn't see her. We saw her swim across the Snake River and knew she was heading towards a place called Pilgrim Creek, and she had to cross the road to get there. And so you kind of just have to guess. And I was on the wrong side of the light when I took this shot. The sun was setting, but I was shooting straight into the sun. And I was actually as close as this picture looks to the bear. There was one of those safari tour vans behind me. When she popped out, she turned and was walking straight towards me, and probably 25 to 30 yards away from me. Not aggressive. She just wanted to cross the road. But I turned and looked at the driver of that van and asked her, can I get in here? And she said, you don't even have to ask, get in. So I had one foot in the van and then kind of leaning out, trying to get some shots. And none of them worked just because the light was bad. I was shooting straight into the sun, and there was nothing I could do because of where she popped out. And if I'd been on the other side of her, it would have been some really beautiful shots. This one here is using backlighting. The sun was behind the subject, and it's a shot I almost passed up. I saw the egret, I saw it catch the fish, And I thought to myself, I got a lot of shots like that. But then I noticed the light around the fish, and I was like, man, I can't pass that up. That light's just hitting that fish great right now. And on Lake, this was taken in Lacombe, Louisiana, on a place called Lake Road. And it's a road that runs north and south. And then on the east and west side, it's nothing but marsh. And then the road ends about a mile down at Lake Pontchartrain. And when I'm on that road, if I'm there in the morning, I usually avoid shooting on the east side, towards the east side, which is the direction this shot was taken, just because it's really hard because of how it's set up to get good light. So I want to shoot on the west side where the subjects are lit up. And in the evening, if I'm going to shoot, it's the opposite. I want to shoot towards the east. And so I've been there enough to where I know the light, I know what it's going to do. And so I can anticipate, hey, I need to go right now if I want to get this type of shot or whatever I want, and when to avoid that area. This shot was taken probably a month or two ago in Sequim, Washington. This is a Roosevelt elk, which is what they say, or they say it's the largest of the subspecies of elk. I was out in a field early in the morning, and just as the sun was starting to come up, and wasn't taking any shots because I didn't have the light that I wanted, because the sun was rising behind the mountains. But then it just started to, as the sun crept up, it just lit her face up. And when I saw that, I knew I wanted to get a portrait with just that pretty orange, soft light hitting her face and just lighting that eye up. Here's an example of filtered light. If you live in areas that have a lot of swampy areas, you know it can be hard to shoot there because you have light coming through everything, through the trees and the moss, the leaves. Sometimes it could create real bad shadows. But if you could find the right spots, those leaves or the moss could filter that light and give you a really pretty soft light. So this shot here was probably taken midday, and I was actually able to get fairly low, which is something that's pretty hard in the area I was shooting at. John, this was taken over in Monroe in your area, at Black Bayou Lake. And where this alligator was, I was able to get real low, sit in the mud and just get those shots. But had it been late evening, this shot would have never worked because it would have been too dark in that swamp. So midday was a good time to get this shot. Here's one where you have different types of light. So it's not always the sun that's creating your light. You have, like I mentioned earlier, different atmospheres. This was taken back in the fall in Wyoming, over at Moore Monroe. And they had storms in the area. They were starting to break over behind me, which is why the grass is lit up. And then you've got those dark clouds in the back, and then that rainbow just lit up. And that's probably the most vivid rainbow I've ever seen in my life. And what I really like about this is just the way it comes down right on those barns. And later on, I think I have a shot where I have bison in almost the same picture from that day. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the power of backgrounds. And before you pull up the camera and take a shot, we should start looking at the background. Where are the distractions at? When we take that picture, what is going to pull our eyes away from the subject when we take the picture? Because a great subject can be ruined by a bad background. And usually it's real cluttered backgrounds, poor light in the background. And kind of like these are two really similar photos of a fox taken in Montana. And if you look at the top photo, those branches in the background, it pulls your eyes away from the fox. They're cutting into him, cutting the top of his ear off, even though they're behind him. And it creates a little bit of a distraction and takes the focus away from the subject. Whereas the bottom photo, there's no trees there, and you just got that nice, pretty background. The snow's there. It's almost a bluish white background, and works a lot better than the top photo. Nothing's pulling your eyes away from that fox. The same thing here with these two owls. The one on the left, you've got the branches coming out the top of his head, coming out the sides, and they just, again, it creates a distraction. It's not, there's no separation between the owl and those branches, so you don't get that nice bokeh behind them with those. Whereas the owl on the right, it's a much prettier background. You still have tree branches back there, but there's a lot of separation. The light's a little better, and there's nothing, again, pulling your eye away from the subject. And we're going to talk about moving around in a minute. And to get that shot of the owl on the right, I had to move around a lot to find a shot, because the angle where I first saw him, there was a lot of distractions. Some of the branches just weren't right. The light from the first angle was that white light. I don't know if y'all know what I'm talking about, but it's just a light that you can't do much with. Even in post, if you try and fix it, it just never seems to look right. But this was taken around sunset out in Tennessee. And so I moved a little bit to where I had a much better background. I got a lot of separation between the owl and those branches in the back. And then there's a little more of that orangish light coming through, which worked a lot better than that white light. So move your position, change the photo by changing your position, get at a lower angle, look for a different background similar to like I did with the owl, look for better light. This is something I see a lot, and I don't know why it drives me crazy, but when I'm out shooting, I see a lot of people sitting in their car, taking pictures of birds on the ground from their car, and I just want to go tell them, get out your car, sit in the mud, get dirty, and you're going to get a better shot than shooting at that downward angle. Now, that downward angle can work sometimes, and I have an example of that in a minute. So this black bear here this picture was taken in the fall, again in Jackson Hole, and we had watched this bear. It was me and four friends. John, who's in here, was with me, and we watched this bear for a long time. Got a lot of great pictures of it, and he kind of, or she was eating berries, getting ready for hibernation, and she was in the bushes a lot, so it's hard to get clean shots. Every now and then she'd poke her head out, and you get a good shot of her coming out the bushes. And then she walked in the gravel road, and she was walking away from us. And my first thought was, if she turns around, that's going to be the shot that I want. So I was observing the scene, anticipating what she was going to do. I saw those colors in the background, and I knew that I wanted a shot with those colors. It was fall, and I wanted something that was going to represent that. The only problem was, what you don't see is over to the right, our cars were parked over there. And so I had to move my position to get a shot where I didn't have the corners of the cars in the shot. This isn't a cropped photo right here. This is, it's a little cropped because of PowerPoint, but the original shot's not cropped at all, and you don't have the cars in it. And it was because I moved a little bit, changed my angle, and then the first thing I did once I got the position where the cars weren't there is I dropped to my knees, and I was down low shooting to where when she turned around, it was that eye contact. There wasn't a bad angle where I was shooting somewhat downward. And I got lucky on this shot, because actually my favorite thing about this shot is her foot, the right foot just bending, and you can, I don't know what it is, something about the bear paw right there is just my favorite thing in this shot. Here's another shot where light and background work really well. We were out there in November. This was taken in Gravant, which is up near Jackson, well, up in Jackson Hole. And we'd been shooting moose all day, and the light was just never right. And we knew this moose had been hanging out in this area. The sun was starting to set, so we decided to go there because the sun would have been setting um, behind me and in front of the moose. So, but there were a lot of clouds that day. So when we first got there, the moose was out and it was late and just couldn't really get a good shot because those clouds were just blocking all the light. And then the clouds opened up and that soft light came through. And right when it did it, right when the light did that, the moose posed right here. So the light worked out really, really well. We anticipated the light being better in this spot, um, which it was once the clouds broke. And then the trees in the back give you, there's enough separation so you have that bokeh between the moose and the trees. Had he been right up against the trees, it's just going to be a really distracting background because you can have the branches kind of in focus. It'll be really hard to work with in post. As I mentioned before, I talked about not wanting to shoot down. This is an example of shooting down, and it works. And the reason I shot down is I wanted that overexposed background with the snow. The two ravens were in the snow. I didn't think I'd get them locking beaks like that, but I knew that I wanted that white overexposed background just to make those ravens really stick out. And I got the idea for this shot. I, I've been going to Jackson Hole for since 2020, a couple times a year, and I'd never been into town except maybe to grab food. Never went in any galleries or anything. And then when I was there, I went into a gallery, and I forgot which photographer it was, but he had a lot of shots of ravens where he was shooting down on them. And I thought to myself, I was like, that's really cool how he did that. And it worked. Where we always hear people say don't shoot down, but if you have a reason to, it can work. And in this case, again, that overexposed background that I wanted, and it kind of gives just a whole different perspective of them, of the two ravens. And here's an example of where a kind of noisy background can work, and the branches are in focus. I really like the greens and the reds in the back. This was taken at Avery Island in South Louisiana near New Iberia. There's an egret rookery out there, and it's a man-made rookery. The egrets come every year, and they start nesting and mating before any of the other rookeries in Louisiana, just because it's man-made, and I guess it's because there's less work they have to do. I'm not really sure why they start earlier than everywhere else. But what kind of makes this photo work instead, because it has a noisy background, is the egret is framed in those branches. You don't have anything really cutting his head off, or pulling your eyes away from him. I was looking at this photo when I decided to put it in this presentation, and there's a couple branches in there that ideally you wouldn't want in there, but nothing really pulls you away from the egret. It's not distracting you. And those branches I'm talking about, there's one kind of at the right, kind of at the top of the egret, and then there's two on the left side of them. But again, they're not distracting. They're not pulling you away from it. So you don't always have to have that nice, clean, pretty background to have a photo work. Just think about it when you're looking, observe the area, and if there's branches or anything just cutting through your subject, or bad light, move. Our feet are two of our biggest tools that we have in photography. I did an article for Linda's newsletter and talked about that. Outside of your camera and lens, I think your feet are probably your biggest tool, because if we don't have a shot at one angle, we can always move to another one and try and get the shot from a different angle. Use the landscape. Look for layers, light direction, and shapes and textures. It's something I don't do that often. I keep saying I want more landscape shots, and then I get out and I want that nice close-up portrait. It's just the way I shoot. I'm trying to break away from it a little bit. But we should use the landscape more. It helps tell the story of the animal that you're shooting and where they live, how they live. And this is an example of one here. This was taken along the Snake River in Wyoming, and you have the elk there. And while he's the subject of this picture, I don't really consider him the subject of the picture. To me, it's the fall colors are really the subject. But we were out there, the elk crossed the Snake River in the fall during the rut almost every morning right here. So we were waiting for him to cross in the morning. The first slide, the opening slide on this presentation was taken at the same area. I don't know if it was the same trip or not, but almost the same exact spot. So the landscape shows you where the elk lives. It tells you, hey, it's fall, winter's coming. The elk may be in rut because they go into rut in the fall, and it tells a better story than if it was just the elk sitting there with nothing else. Here's one that was taken in Louisiana, and there's a lot I like about this photo. I like the landscape. It clearly tells you, hey, the deer and the heron are in the marsh. They're walking looking for food. But what I really liked about this is you usually don't see two different species like this together. And then they were walking side by side. They were walking from the right to the left. And you could kind of tell that by they both have their legs moving, and they're in sync with each other. And I watched them for a while after this picture was taken, and they just hung out together for a while. The deer was eating the grass, the heron was hunting, and it's always fun seeing how animals interact with each other and how sometimes they're better than we are when it comes to how they treat each other. And then here's another elk. This was in Rocky Mountain National Park. Again, the landscape tells you where he's at. He's in the mountains. It's rugged. The terrain's there. You've got a lot of different textures in this picture. Even though there's a lot of texture and there's a lot of branches in the back, he's kind of framed in a spot where there's no distractions. So had he been a little over to the left where those branches are coming out, they would have probably just messed the entire shot up. So always observe your backgrounds, move around if necessary, and use the landscapes when you can. It's something, again, that I'm trying to do more of, and I've just got to train myself to do it. And here's one. I really like this one. It's a shot. Every time I go to the Tetons, I want the shot with the horses with the Tetons in the background, but I could never get it for some reason. Either the horses aren't there or the clouds are hiding the mountains. And this day it worked out great. I had the two horses walking towards me. Wish they would have picked their heads up more and posed a little bit, but we can't make animals do things, and they didn't do that. But I like this because it kind of feels like the horses are tired. They're coming in from whatever they've been doing all day and just ready for rest. And then the mountains in the background just worked out really well like I wanted. And I'm going to keep going there and trying to get the shot that I envision, because there's a shot that I have in mind. I just haven't got it yet. And here's another elk in Rocky Mountain National Park. When this shot was taken, he was first laying down in the grass. This was taken, I think, 2022. He was laying in the grass, and I was trying to figure out where I wanted the shot from, because I told myself I'm sitting there till he stands up and poses. So I was trying to figure out where the shot would be that I wanted. I walked around a little bit and thought I found the spot and kind of set up. And then I looked behind me, and this was the view behind me. And when I looked behind, I was like, okay, that's where the shot is. So now I need to figure out how to position myself to where I could get the elk in that shot. So I moved around a little bit, got in position, just sat there and waited probably for 20 or 30 minutes. And then he stood up, he posed, and then started walking straight towards me. And my first thought was, okay, do I stand up and move or do I just sit here? And I sat there because I didn't want to stand up and scare him to where he attacks me. And so I sat there, and then he walked off, and over the side was about 30 yards away was the road, and my Jeep was right there. And he went and stuck his head in my Jeep because the windows were down. So that may have been a shot where I could have taken some shots from the car. But I'm glad I wasn't in the car when he did that. And this is the bison shot I was talking about earlier, similar to the one with the two barns in the background. Again, just like that other shot, the light's coming in from behind, lighting up that grass. It's hitting those bison. Then you have the dark clouds in the back with some of the storms breaking up. And then over to the right of the rainbow, you've got rain coming down. So you've got a lot of different things going on in this picture that make it work. Had it just been a blue sky day in that field with the bison right there, I don't think this shot would work. But the storms, the rainbow, the grass, I'll use the light. The whole landscape just comes together as one. And then we want to shoot with intent. Ask ourselves, what do we want the image to say? And so these next few slides are animals that have been affected by us. And I took these shots, and it's something I'm going to start doing more and posting them to try and bring awareness to what happens when we leave trash behind or when we don't clean up after ourselves, how it affects not just the land, but the animals that live there. And so these shots, that was my intent when I took these. But your intent might not be to tell a story like that. Your intent may be, hey, I want to go out and photograph otters, and use that intent to find out where the otters are, and then kind of go wait where you think they are. Don't just run around in circles all day looking for them, unless you chase them around, you know they're there. But set your shot up, find a spot where you have a good background, where the light's going to be right, and then just wait for your subject to appear. And to do this, you kind of have to be familiar with the wildlife that you're shooting and know that it's in that area and frequents that area. You can't really just go somewhere and set up without scouting. I mean, it can work. You can get lucky, but most of the time you'll just be wasting your time waiting. But if you scout the area and know, you could really set up some really good shots just by having that intent of knowing what you want. So the next three shots are the same shot of this heron. I just used different cropping on them because I wanted to show a picture from a little bit further away than closer, and then a really close-up shot of it. And when I saw this heron, this was down here in Louisiana on Lake Road, which I talked about earlier. And on the weekends, that road has hundreds of people fishing and crabbing on the side of it. They don't pick anything up when they leave. They leave their crabbing line hanging in the water with their chicken legs or turkey necks still tied to it. So the birds go and try and eat that. I've rescued a great blue heron out there that was drowning because it had a chicken leg wrapped around its wing and the water was too deep for it. I was about to go in the water to try and grab it, thinking to myself, this bird's going to stab me in the eye. And luckily I found the end of the rope, and as I pulled it, it unwrapped from its swing and the bird got to shore. So I didn't have to put myself in any danger to rescue the bird. I've seen a belted kingfisher hanging from the wires out there dead because people cast it and wrap their lines around the wires and then cut it. And I don't know if the kingfisher thought something was food and tried to grab it, or if it was just flying by and got tangled in the lines, but it was just hanging there dead. And I mean, it's just real sad to think that bird suffered just dangling from that wire, and there was nothing anybody could do. And then recently, last weekend, I got pictures of a pelican with a hook on the side of its head. So we always need to remember, pick our stuff up and don't leave anything behind. And when you're out shooting wildlife, if you get these pictures like these, share them. Try and bring awareness to people. If we could just get through to one person and they start picking them after themselves, we've won part of the battle. So here's the second shot, or same shot, just cropped in a little bit more. You can see how that rope's really wrapped around his bill. His eye, there's a little distress in the eyes. And then that white part at the back of the bottom bill looks like it's a little swollen right there. I can't tell. I've never noticed it on a heron before, so I'm not sure if that always looks like that, but it could be a little bit swollen. And then this picture here shows you just how tight that line really is around its bottom bill. You can see how it's kind of pinching that spot I was talking about. And then there's some either blood or bruising on the back right of the bottom bill, where he's probably been trying to get it off. And when I saw this, I made some phone calls and had some people go out and look for him. But as I was taking the pictures, the bird flew in the marsh. And unless he returned, I mean, he was never going to be found. So I suspect that he probably died of starvation, because I doubt he would have been able to get that off. So real sad story here. And then this one here is another sad story. This was taken in Slidell, Louisiana back in December. Nobody's quite sure if this is a great blue heron or an egret. I say great blue heron. The chest plumage on it didn't match an egret, but everyone thought this bird was a melanistic heron, meaning that it had a darker pigment to it. And there was some argument back and forth on whether it was oil stained or melanistic. And we had bird experts going back and forth on it, because there was video. I sent video to some bird experts, and the way the bird was acting, it didn't seem like it was distressed. It seemed fine. Then people would argue, well, it's not fine because it's letting you get close to it. And I wasn't the only person taking pictures of it. And there were a lot of people mad at the photographers, and I'd tell them, we thought the bird was okay, and we're not going to interfere with nature. Because if it's a melanistic heron, why would we want to interfere with it and put it under stress? Had everyone thought that it was oil covered, we would have probably tried to catch it. But like I said, bird experts were going back and forth with it, and they didn't. Nobody sent anybody there to try and collect it, so we all just assumed it was melanistic. Then the day after this photo was taken, the bird was found dead on the side of the road. It's not unknown, right? Or it's unknown what killed it, I suspect, because there were feathers laying around. I think it got hit by a car because it was a fairly busy road. And early in the morning or at night, the bird was walking back and forth across the road throughout the day. So it's probably, my guess is somebody hit it with a car on accident because they didn't see it. But the bird was sent, whoever collected the bird said it was definitely oil stained, and it was sent to LSU for analysis. And I never heard anything once it went to LSU, but someone did confirm that it was oil. And so I had this picture of it, and I wanted to show the beauty of the tragedy, because, I mean, this picture is just beautiful with that eye sticking out. The black feathers, but then when you hear the story, it's really sad how this bird had to suffer. And we don't know how long it suffered, because it just appeared in that area one day, which is a whole nother concern, because where did it get this oil on it? Was there a spill somewhere that nobody knows about, or was somebody just dumping oil out in the swamp and using the swamp as their own disposal? And to this day, nobody knows where the oil came from. So again, use your intent, or think of the intent of what you want to show, whether it's a story you want to tell or you just want to go out and your intent is to find a certain subject, you know what background you want, and go with it. Anticipation versus reaction. We want to position ourselves where the moment's likely to happen. When most of us start wildlife photography, we react. We see a subject, we want to jump out of our car or hurry up and pull the camera up and start taking pictures. And we often get bad pictures. The quality of the picture may be good, but just the moment's not the best. A good example of this is when I'm out in Wyoming and people are photographing the grizzlies. People are taking thousands of shots, and the bear's head's down in the grass. He or she's digging for grubs, and they're reacting to the scene. If you learn to use anticipation and watch what the animal's doing, then you could go and you could position yourself in a spot with a really good background. You can kind of start to learn to anticipate what the animal is going to do. I don't know if it's in here, but I've got a picture of a moose and it is in here, so I'll tell the story in a minute. But learn how to anticipate versus react. And sometimes you just have to sit and watch animals, learn their behaviors. Don't even bother picking up your camera. The more we study and learn what our subject's going to do, the better our pictures are going to be, because we're going to get that action. We're going to get the better pose. We're not just going to have 100 pictures of an animal eating grass. So here's one. I think I used this the last time in my presentation. I was on the beach. I was in Orange Beach, Alabama, sitting on the beach watching a bunch of seagulls, and I kept watching them yawn. And I started thinking, I was like, that'd be a really cool picture if I could get one yawning. But as I sat there, it was really hard to figure out which one was going to yawn, because I'd focus on one, then another one would yawn. So I'd turn the camera to try and get that one. And then the one that I was focused on the first time would yawn. So I started watching their behavior, and there was one that every time he would yawn, he would kind of move around. He'd do something with his head. I don't remember exactly what it was, but he was doing something that would tell that he was about to yawn. So I just sat there laying in the sand with the camera focused on him. And when I saw him start to do that little movement, got ready and got the pictures. And this actually came out better than what I wanted. I didn't think I'd get the whole shot straight down his throat like that. So by watching them for a few minutes, I learned what they were doing before they yawned and was able to anticipate with the one that I was focused on. So, almost same thing here. This was in Cook City, Montana, and we were watching some foxes. And I knew when I was there, I was like, I want a fox yawn, and I knew I wanted that shot. That was kind of my intent, along with a few other shots. But it was, I think, -7 degrees. I didn't have gloves with me, and I'd sit there holding the camera. And then I get to where I'd have to put the camera down and put my hands in my pockets to warm them back up. And 3 times in a row, as soon as I put the camera down to do that, the fox yawned. And then a few minutes later, and every time he would do it, he was, at those times, he was balled up in a little ball and would yawn. And a few minutes later, another fox started walking in, and this one kind of perked its ears up when that one started walking in. So I had the decision to make. Do I want to focus on the other fox coming in and see what he's going to do, or stay focused on this one? But I had a feeling that that he was about to yawn, because he was starting to get a little antsy with that other fox. So I sat there waiting, and then I got more than a bargain for. He stood up and did that stretch and yawned at the same time. So again, I had that intent of what I wanted. I was anticipating him yawning. I just missed it the first 3 times, and then the fourth one I got a shot better than the one that I thought I would get. So this is the moose shot I was talking about with a minute ago. This was over at the Blacktail Pond Overlook in Jackson Hole, and we were up on the ledge watching. We knew the moose was in the area, and so there's a little trail that goes down. It's not wide at all. If you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. And so I walked down there because from up high, there was no angle. And if you got too low, you didn't have a shot because the willows were too tall. So I walked down on that little trail, and there's a drop off on one side, probably 15 feet, maybe. Not enough to kill me if I fell, but enough to scrape me up a good bit. And so I was watching the moose, and I saw a little where the creek or the river bends out there. I could see the water, and I thought, man, he was walking in that direction. It's like if he goes there and poses, that's the shot. So I set everything up. I was waiting for that shot. He was walking that way. They had a bunch of other photographers about 30 yards away from me set up somewhere else. They were anticipating him coming towards a grove of cottonwood trees, which I looked at, and there was no shot there. And so I stayed where I was, and then he walked in the pond, that little spot of water, and just kept going. He didn't pose like I wanted. So I kind of panicked, thinking I wasn't going to get a shot. So I grabbed all my gear and ran to where everybody else was. And when I got there, I noticed that the moose had turned around and he was going back to the water. And I thought to myself, it's like, I should have stayed where I was. I'm going to miss the shot. And sure enough, I run back to the other spot set up. And as I'm setting up, he stands in that creek, poses, and walks out. So I anticipated what he was going to do, but I kind of panicked thinking I wasn't going to get the shot. And I went to a spot where I really had no shot. And so I started watching and looking at what he was doing. And next thing I know, he's walking up that little ledge. And I have nowhere to go except backwards. So I'm slowly backing up, and the moose is probably about 10 feet from me. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I'm going to be on Torrons of Yellowstone or something now. And that's my biggest fear when I'm out there, is that someone's going to record me and put me on the internet, and there's going to be no context in what was going on. But the moose looked at me, turned around, and then by this time, everybody's back up at the top trying to get an angle for a shot. And he goes down and walks back up the ledge a little further down, and then just turned and looked at me and posed right here. And while I was going up, I was like, please pose close enough so I could get that cottonwood in the shot. And he did that. And so again, anticipation, I stuck to my guns that time when I saw the shot that I wanted, instead of going up to where everybody else was. And at worst, I would have got a butt shot, but the moose kind of turned and posed and looked back. And here's another shot with anticipation. I was watching the coyote, and he was in the snow hunting, and every time he would pounce, he would kind of paw at the ground for a second, then pounce. And so I wanted the shot of him pouncing. And so I kept watching and learned what he was doing. And then when I saw that him like kind of scraping the ground a little bit, I knew he was about to jump. So at that point, I was ready and just started shooting. I always say there's a time to just hold the shutter button down and take 20 frames a second. And then there's times where you don't need to do that. And when you want action, sometimes it's important to just do those burst shots. And in this case, it was good that I did it, because out of all the shots, this was the one that worked. And this is another shot where there was some anticipation going on. And there were, I think, 6 or 7 bull moose in the area. This was taken in Gravant. And in November, all the bull moose go and congregate and Gravant and Kelly out in Jackson Hole. The rut's over, so they're hanging out together. They're not fighting. And there's one moose kind of off to himself, but I wanted three moose in the shot. And these were walking together, but they really weren't doing anything, just walking. And then they put their heads down, and they weren't sporing here. They just kind of eating a little bit. And like I talked about a minute ago, not taking the shot when they're eating grass. But I liked this shot because I knew I didn't know if I would get it. The one in the back was just walking with his head down, and I wanted all their eyes in one shot. And so I just held that burst smoke, the shutter button down, and was just firing away and hoping that I got what I wanted. And when I went through probably about 100 pictures, this was the only one where all three eyes were showing. And if the eyes weren't there, I don't think this picture would work at all. But because you could see that the eyes kind of form a triangle there, and it just works in my opinion. And again, it was anticipating, watching those three moose, focusing on what they were doing, waiting for a shot. I knew what I wanted. I had that intent and ended up getting what I wanted. So something I wish I would have learned from the get-go is the discipline not to shoot. Not every encounter needs a photograph. I've come back from places before where I had 3,000 pictures and very few of them were good. And it's just because I thought that every shot, every time I saw something, I wanted to take a picture of it. In my mind, I was like, I could crop it or do something in Lightroom and make the picture work. And 9 out of 10 times, it never worked. So what's wrong with these three pictures? Why shouldn't they have been taken? The bear, I really liked the bear's pose. And this picture, I didn't have much time. I mean, we were going up a dirt road. We saw the bear, jumped out the car, took the shot, and then he was gone. So I didn't really have time to think much, but I like his pose. But what makes this picture not work is the color of the bear blends too much into that background. He was up on the side of a hill, so there's no separation between him and that grass. So it's not that it's distracting. It just blends in so much that to me, it doesn't work. I really wish I could have gotten him with that pose in a different area, because in that case, I really think it would have worked. The light was a little bit harsh also. He's a little bit overblown on his left side. So the light wasn't that great either. Then the roseate spoonbill at the top right, the angle was bad for that picture. The bird's not doing anything. He's just there. If I would have been a little bit lower and he had something in his mouth, then it would work. But this is just, in my opinion, it's a boring shot. And then the night heron at the bottom right, again, it's just a boring shot. The bird's not doing anything. The eye contact's there, which is good, but that's about it. The light behind him is not the best. His pose isn't the best. Again, it's just another boring shot. So if you're new to wildlife photography, you know somebody who's trying to get into it, and you're trying to teach them some things, teach them that not every encounter needs a photograph. In these cases, sitting and watching would have been better. Learning a little bit more about my subject. Some key takeaways: observe longer than you shoot. The more you observe, the more you're going to learn about your subject, the more you're going to start to pick out things in backgrounds. You'll identify, hey, if I move here, it's going to be a better shot than if I take the shot where I'm at. You'll start to think different. And I think in the newsletter article I did, said, think, sometimes we need to think like a landscape photographer. And that's really true. If we look at the landscape, take the animal out of it for a few seconds and just look at the landscape, we could compose way better shots. Move your feet. Again, like I said, your feet are one of your biggest tools in wildlife photography. You might not have a shot where you are, but if you move a little bit, you're going to have the shot. And some people will say, well, if I move, I might scare the subject away. Well, if you're shooting a bird and you don't have a good shot and it flies away, who cares? You're not taking a bad shot. But if you move slowly and move to a better spot, you may get that shot, that wow shot. Think about light, the light and the background. Think about where the light's coming from. If you're shooting in the morning, do you want a backlit shot? And if so, shoot towards the sunrise. But again, think about that bear picture I showed earlier. Try not to shoot right to the sun to where you're going to get that kind of fuzzy, out of focus, hazy look. Try and position yourself to where you're going to be able to use that light to your advantage. And sometimes it's real good with the mirrorless cameras nowadays. You can see exactly what you're taking a picture of. When you get there, take a couple shots and look at the back of your camera and see what it looks like. If you need to move or if you need to adjust your settings. The background, again, think about your backgrounds. And remember, it doesn't have to be a nice, clean background if your subject's framed right. You could have other things in the background. Use your environment to your advantage and anticipate the moment. When we start learning to anticipate and watching what an animal is going to do, look at the direction it's going and set yourself up somewhere where you think it's going to go. You may miss some shots, but a lot of times you're going to get really, really good shots. And then final thoughts, wildlife photography or photography in general isn't about chasing moments. It's about recognizing when the moment's about to happen. And when we start recognizing it, we're going to get much better shots. And we start thinking about what we want. The pelican here, this was actually a fairly boring shot. I knew what I wanted in the shot. This was the pelican. He was perched on a piling. And if you ever watch pelicans, they'll turn around and face their whole head behind them and kind of nestle their beak into the back between the wings. And when I was looking through my lens, I just saw that look on his face. And I went back and in post, this is a cropped shot. It's a pretty heavily cropped shot too. But I like his look. He looks kind of angry. And then the eyes aren't different colors. A lot of people thought that he had one brown eye and one blue eye, but pelicans, like a lot of other shorebirds and raptors, I can't think of what it's called. They have a membrane, almost like a third eyelid that they could close. I didn't know they could close one at a time until I saw this picture. But I have other photos where that membrane's open and both of his eyes are blue. But it's really cool that in this picture, it's one brown eye and one blue eye. And he's just got that menacing look on his face. And I saw the shot I wanted. I couldn't get it from where I was. So I used cropping to my advantage. And that's the last slide other than this. My website is josephmarkphotography.com. Here you can see pictures. I have images for sale and then info on workshops that I'm doing. And then I have my social media links here. Actually on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, it's all the same. It's Joseph Mark Photography. And then my email is josephmarkphotography@gmail.com. And just remember that's Mark with a C. It's the French way of spelling it. And a lot of people get confused when they're looking for my info. They always want to put the K. So just remember to use that C.
Okay. All right. I was scanning the thing. I don't see any questions in there, which I don't mind you not having any questions. I've I'm gonna echo somebody else's note in here about how practical the information you shared is. It's like stuff we know, stuff we hear before, but you really drove it home in your presentation, Joey. Um, I can see where your passion is. It is, I don't know that you should be living in Louisiana. I think you should just find a place in Grand Tetons or Montana. I think that's
Trust
where
me,
you,
I'm looking, but the jobs that I've had that have showed interest are like
yeah.
$40,000 a year. And I've
Mhm.
done, no matter how much I try to do the math, I can't live out there on 40,000 a year.
No, you
And
can't.
trust me, I've tried doing the math a million different ways to make it work, and it just doesn't work. And I don't
Yeah,
want to go out there and have to have three jobs like most people. I'm
right.
working 80 hours a week, and I can't enjoy what the reason I want to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I just your okay, who gets lucky to see three moose in one frame? I've not even seen I've seen one moose so far away that I wasn't even sure if it was a moose and somebody said it is. But
One year, I
so
counted 50 of them in the field at one time.
oh
So
my
if you
God.
want to photograph, if you want to photograph moose, go to Jackson Hole after the rut, probably late October through mid-December, and hang out. Just make the loop all the way from the airport through Kelly, Wyoming, and Gravant. And just keep making that loop, and you're going to see more moose than you could ever imagine.
I can't even imagine that that would happen for me, but what a wonderful photo. I think the first photo that kind of took my breath away was, I think it's the alligator in the water lily or
Yeah,
the, what do you call that? That was just, that's a photo I would love to have. I've seen plenty of alligators, but nothing like that is in my
it's
portfolio.
hard to get low enough to shoot them because you're
Well,
always a little higher because of the water, and unless you get
and
in
you're
the
also,
water. But
no,
here,
not getting
I
it.
don't. I'm not worried about getting eaten by an alligator, but in
I
Louisiana, at least, if you get in the water, you don't know how soft that mud is, and the water might be 3 feet deep, and you're going to sink up to your neck. And I'm not carrying that camera and that lens where I'm going to ruin it because I sink and end up dropping it or it going underwater.
Only a boy from Louisiana is going to say it's okay to get in the water with the alligator. No, it is not. It is not. But yeah, that was a really cool photo, only to be followed by the rainbow. Oh my goodness. That was pretty mesmerizing. So you've got a lot of nice photos in your catalog there, sir. So thank you for coming and sharing with us, especially these little, reminders. Slow it down, people. And I think you were speaking straight to me because my patience of observation is pretty short. I always feel like I don't have enough time to sit and wait. And I know, and I've done it. I produce really some of my better work when I just wait, and I just don't
And
always do that.
I think
So
we all do that still. Like we
I
jump
know,
out,
but
and when I first started photography, and I'd see a bird in flight, for example, I was like, how am I going to get this picture? It's like everything was moving so fast. And now I'm like driving. I'm like, oh, there's an eagle up there. I'm going to pull over right here, get out the car, drink my coffee, and then pull the camera out and get the shot. It just slows down so much once you start doing it and getting out there. Um, and it doesn't move as fast as you think it is most of the time. Sometimes it really is that fast. Um,
yeah.
but most of the time, you have a lot more time than you think.
Yeah, I always think with wildlife, I have just a couple of seconds and they're going to be gone. So I am always moving a little way too fast. And sometimes I spook the animals because of it. So, and I know that my brain knows that, but still I haven't broken that habit. But
And
the
I
more
didn't put
and
in the
more,
present. One, it made me think of it, and I should have put it in there. If you're driving looking for things and
that's me.
you see a deer, an owl, whatever it is, don't stop in front of it. Keep
Right, right,
going
right,
about
right.
30, 40 yards down the
Yep.
road and then stop and get out your car. If you stop in front of it, it's going to
Yeah.
go. So
Oh, yeah,
keep
yeah,
going and then get out and kind of make your way back.
yeah. No, that is something I do have that down. So, all right, Joey, I'm going to wrap your session up. I'm going to say thank you again for coming and sharing. And I truly appreciate it. And the photos were beautiful. So keep going west, young man, because I think you're getting some of your best work. Because I think you love that area. So, and
I
it
do.
really
And
shows.
it's
It's
been my
reflective.
vacation. It's been my vacation since 2020. Every vacation I've been on, that's where I go.
I don't know. Maybe it's not a vacation, it's just your calling. That's what it is. We're gonna, yeah.
And
All
it feels
right.
like home out there.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm out there, I feel like a tour guide sometimes because people come talk to me. They're like, "Where can I find a bear?" And like, go over here, and this is where they hang out. Um, and I kind of just I always point people where to go.
Well, um, from somebody that often asks people, "What am I looking for? Where can I find?" I appreciate that in a fellow photographer. So keep doing that. It only buys you um, more merit badges. So. All right, Joey. Thanks for coming and again sharing the work that you're doing and all these little ideas that you've kind of fed to us. Slowly, we're going to get there. All right, next week, bird photographer Daniel Gomez will be here with his presentation, Creativity with Bird Portrait Photography, which is more than just the bird. So, have a nice night, and we'll see you next week. All right.